present. Any matters to address?
Would it be appropriate to inquire of the jurors whether they have been exposed to any type of media coverage?
Sure would. Thanks. I'll do that first thing when they come in. And I think it's going to be 5 or more minutes till they get up. Do y'all have any thought about whether we should start beginning at 8:30? I mean, I'm good with 9, but I know y'all got more to get together than obviously I do every morning.
Judge, the state would prefer 9, just because of what the court just said.
That's fine.
We would prefer 9 as well, Judge, just because of office issues.
Okay. Do we believe we're going to have any videos played today?
Judge, maybe a brief video from the DHS lobby, which is just a couple of minutes.
Okay, but nothing extensive.
Nothing extensive. Just for the court's information, witness number 15, Matt Enfinger, that's where the state will be playing the defendant's interviews, and they're combined, I think. I don't know if I wrote it on my, oh, look at me, I did. So the July 31st interview is about an hour and a half, and then the August 1st interview is about an hour.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, just as a reminder, make sure your ringers and all your electronic devices are turned off. If you must, look at your phone. I prefer you to step outside, but if you have to, make sure that everything is turned off, all your volumes and everything else, please. Thank you.
But if there's media with devices, you don't have to turn them off as long as they're on silent.
I'm sorry, Judge.
No, and counsel, I know you sometimes you have to have cell phones to keep information flowing. Thank you. All right, good morning, welcome back. If we can get their legal pads assigned out. If I could see by a show of hands, anyone who has viewed, listened to, or otherwise been in touch with any information regarding this case since you left yesterday evening, please raise your hand. I see no hands. Thank you. All right, we'll get everybody their notepads handed out, and then we'll begin. All right, everybody's got a pencil who needs one? Very good. All right, Mr. Griffith, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to do a few follow-ups to what Ms. Jensen asked you yesterday.
Okay.
Now, my understanding is you were a crime scene technician, right?
Correct.
And you worked with Christine Rollins?
Yes.
And was Christine the lead crime scene technician?
Yes.
And then you would have been second in line?
Correct.
And you first responded at about 1 p.m. on the 31st of July, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And who was there at the time you arrived?
At the time I arrived, Christy was already there, and the initial responding deputies as well. There may have been a couple investigators, but I can't remember who for sure, because they were waiting to get a search warrant signed.
Okay. Did you ever see or talk to Mr. Hartung?
No.
When you arrived, was there someone you report to as a crime scene technician?
I just checked in with Christy at that point to see what we had.
Okay. And were you assigned any duties by Ms. Rollins?
She just requested that I take the video of the crime scene.
Okay. And did you have any interaction with the lead investigator?
Would that be Matt Enfinger?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Did he give you any direction, or was he dealing mainly with Ms. Rollins at that point?
Nothing specific. Once we were inside the house, if they found anything that they needed us to take care of, they would point us in that direction.
So you started videotaping, is that correct?
Yes.
And while you were videotaping the interior of the house, I take it, is that correct?
Yes, I did both exterior and interior.
While you were videotaping the interior of the house, what was Ms. Rollins doing?
She would have just been going around taking any additional photographs or just trying to figure out what evidence was going to be relevant and making a plan.
Okay. As crime scene technicians, do you on your own make that decision as to the relevancy of evidence, or do you get guidance from the lead investigator?
We'll get guidance from the investigators.
And in your case, you didn't get any guidance from Mr. Enfinger, or Investigator Enfinger, is that correct?
No, nothing specific that I remember.
Okay. So, when you were doing your videotaping, had the 3 victims been removed yet, or were they still there?
They had been removed, all 3 of them.
Okay. And you videotaped every room, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you gather up any evidence or take any evidence into your possession?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go back to that in a minute.
Okay.
After you completed videotaping the interior of the house, did you also videotape the exterior?
Yes.
There was, as I understand it, a pretty large shed in the backyard.
Yes.
Did you videotape that?
I can't recall if I actually got that in my video or not.
Okay. And do you remember going inside that shed, or did you just do the exterior if you did any of it
It may
at
have
all?
just been the exterior. I can't remember.
There were 2 vehicles, as the testimonies told us, that were parked on the side of the house, a silver one and a white little SUV type vehicle.
Correct.
Did you videotape those?
Yes.
And did you videotape the interior of those?
Yes.
Did you see anything that would be evidence that you seized in either of those?
No.
Do you see any money in either one of those?
I believe there was a check located in one of the vehicles, but I believe Christy collected the check.
Okay. But other than the check, there was no dollar bills or any cash?
No, not that I saw.
I believe while you were there, the FDLE came, did they not?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of them coming?
They were using their Faro machine to do a sketch of the crime scene. It creates a 3D sketch.
And if you would, for the jury, can you explain to us what a Faro sketch is?
So this Faro machine, it's kind of shaped like this. You can put it in the middle of the room, and it does scans of the room, and it can do measurements as well, and it creates a 3D scan of that room. And we could do that for every room in the entire house in this case.
And was that done in this case?
Yes.
And ultimately, based upon that, did you do a diagram of the house?
Not immediately, no.
Eventually, did you do a diagram?
Yes.
And when did you do that diagram?
I believe it was completed in November.
And was that based upon the Faro sketch, or the Faro video?
I did not look at any of the Faro documents. I did it based on memory and the photographs of the scene.
And is that the one the state asked you to do for them?
Correct.
And I believe that's already been introduced. Okay. Now, what is a Visio program?
Visio is just one of the online programs that we have on our computers in crime scene. It just is the program that we use to create our sketches that you would have seen earlier.
And is that the sketch, is that the program you use to create the sketch that has been introduced by the state?
Yes.
And was that sketch to scale?
No.
So it just shows the rooms and some of the sketches of furniture, but it's not a to-scale drawing, correct?
Correct.
Now, during your testimony, you talked about you found suspected blood, but then when you tested it, it was not blood in a couple places.
Correct.
Do you recall that?
Yes.
I think one, when you walk in the back door on the wall to the right, there was what you all thought was blood, and then it turned out to not be blood.
Correct.
Do you recall it?
Yes.
Explain that process to the jury.
So any areas we see that could be blood, but we're not sure, we use that phenolphthalein, and this is just a presumptive test for blood. It does not confirm anything. And you take a cotton swab, you swab the area that you think may be blood, you add the chemicals to it, and if it does test the presence of blood, the swab will turn an immediate pink color change. But it is known to, it's not species specific too, so it can react positively with animal blood or anything too, so it doesn't necessarily tell you that it is human blood, so further testing would need to be done.
So if a dog had a cut, that would show up blood, but you couldn't tell if it was human blood or dog blood, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know how many times you tested the area in the house for blood and it turned up there was no blood? Do you have it?
So I believe I did there were around 36 areas that were marked for suspected blood, and I think I ended up with around 23 areas that were positive that were then swabbed for possible DNA.
And of those 23, you didn't know if it was human blood or animal blood, but it was just blood, right?
Correct.
And was most of that where the bodies were found? In the rooms where the bodies were found?
Yes.
Now, it's my understanding that in the utility room, there was no blood.
Correct.
And there was no blood in the foyer.
Correct.
And you said there was some on the freezer.
Yes.
And again, could that have been blood in the freezer from taking out meat or taking something, or putting it in where blood would come out of a package?
It could have been, yes.
And I think you said there was also some on the washing machine that was next to the freezer, is that right?
Correct.
Do you have the ability as crime scene technicians to check washing machines to see if there's any blood in the washing machine?
We could have used that blue star spray to see if it may have reacted.
How about in drains? For instance, if somebody washed their hands or washed a knife or something like that that had blood on it, can you check in the drains to see if there's blood?
With the drains, it would be easier to just remove the whole drain and just have it sent off to the lab to do that for us.
To your knowledge, in this case, was that done?
I know that we did collect the drains, but I'm not sure whether or not they were sent off to a lab.
So they were collected, but we don't know what happened to them? Is that
Correct.
fair?
Yes.
And where were the drains that you collected, if you recall?
Can I refer to
Sure,
our report?
absolutely.
Okay. I have a laundry bathroom sink drain pipe that was collected, so that would be from that bathroom that was right off the laundry room.
Is that the half bath?
Yes. The guest bathroom sink drain. So that would have been down the hallway by the bedrooms. And that is all that I see at the moment, unless I'm missing something.
So you didn't test the kitchen drain?
Not that I
Take out
see
the
on
kitchen
here. Oh, I have kitchen faucet and kitchen sink drain, so yes.
So, as I understand, if you suspect there may be blood in these drains, you just remove the whole drain?
Correct, yes.
And then is that given to the investigator, or do you send it to the lab, or how does that work exactly?
So then I would turn those into evidence, and then it would be up to investigations whether or not they want it sent off to the lab.
And do the investigators get a list from you as to what evidence you have taken into your custody?
They have access to that, yes.
So then it's up to them to determine whether they're going to do any further investigation or not?
Correct.
When these areas turn up positive for blood, and you take a photograph of it, correct?
Yes.
And after you photograph, and you've also got photographs of the area that are suspected of blood, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So when you determine, gee, there's blood here, what do you next do?
So next, any of the areas that did test positive for blood using the presumptive test, I would then do another additional swab of the blood. It's the same process. You use a Q-tip cotton swab. You put distilled water on the tip of it, and then you rub the area to get some blood onto that Q-tip for you. And those are then, I take them back to the office with me, package them, and turn those into evidence.
And again, it's up to the investigator to see whether or not he is going to have those checked for DNA?
Yes.
You indicated that when you use the phenolphthalein, did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
When you use the phenolphthalein solution to see if something is blood, that it would turn pink?
Correct.
Do you take photographs of when it turns pink or not?
Sometimes I do. I don't remember doing it in this case.
Okay. Do you recall if Ms. Rollins did it in this case?
I don't recall.
Now, there's no blood in the utility room, correct?
Correct.
No blood in the bathroom next to the utility room?
Correct.
Dining room? No blood?
No blood.
Formal living room?
No blood.
Richard's room?
No blood.
And the foyer?
No blood. There may have been, there was some sort of end table at the end of the hallway that ended up testing when we did the blue star. Yeah, that would just be the end of the hallway then. So the foyer, then no, there was no blood.
Okay. Now, you just talked about Blue Star. Tell me, or tell the jury and me what the Blue Star is.
So Blue Star is another test that you can use for blood, but in this case, you can use it in areas that you don't necessarily see things that you think are blood, because you can use it on areas that may have been wiped away as well. So for this, we just, it's a spray chemical. You spray the whole house, you have to dim the lights so that'll react, and it's a blue light that'll luminesce areas that may have blood. So we just went around to make sure we hadn't missed any areas in the house.
Okay. And what day did you do the Blue Star?
That would have been August 2nd, I believe. Yes, August 2nd.
Was that the third day you returned to the house?
Yes, it was.
Okay, I'm going to get back to that in a moment if I could. We know obviously there was a lot of blood where the bodies were.
Correct.
And there was apparently what would be referred to as a blood trail from a recliner into the front of John's bedroom where Mrs. Smith was found.
That's right.
Now, you expected that to show up with all your testing, and I take it it did.
Yes.
And then you went around to the other areas of the house just to see what might be there. Is
Yes,
that correct?
that's right.
Now, at what point during the first day, which would have been, I think, the 31st of August that you were there,
Yes.
at what point did FDLE arrive?
I'm not sure what time they arrived.
When you enter a crime scene, do you have to sign in on a log that says your name and what time you arrive and what time you leave?
Yes, usually the initial deputy is responsible for keeping a log of everyone who goes in and out and what time.
But is there a place where you personally sign?
No, they just fill it out. They ask us our name when we walk up.
When you walked up at 1:40 or so on the 31st of August, July rather, did you check in with anyone?
I don't remember.
So you don't know if you were logged in or not, is that correct?
No, I don't know for sure.
Okay. Now, what time did you leave on the 31st?
Around 1:30 a.m.
So you were there about 12 hours?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And then when did you next go back?
7 a.m. that same morning, so Saturday morning on the 1st at 7 a.m.
Okay, about 5.5 hours later.
Yes.
And when you went back on the 1st of August, what was the purpose?
That was the day that we went around marking all the areas of suspected blood and testing them with the phenolphthalein.
Okay, and who did you go with that day?
That day I had another crime scene tech with me, Lawrence Masita.
Did he ride with you?
No,
So you arrived at different times?
correct.
And were you there first, or
I can't say for sure. We probably got there around the same time.
were there any other deputies in the residence at the time you arrived?
No.
Was there anyone there to give you any direction, or did you know why you were going back and just have that in your mind?
I can't remember if there were any investigators there the second day or not.
Okay, well, that was kind of my, when I said deputies, I meant to include investigators in that.
Yeah, I can't remember who all was there on the second day.
So there may have been investigators there before you, or may not have been. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And on that second day, what did you do?
That was when we were marking all the areas of suspected blood with those photo stickers and then testing them with the pheno, and if they tested positive for blood, then doing the swabs of those.
Did you do more photography that day?
Yes.
And what photographs did you take?
Those would have been the overalls of all the areas of suspected blood that we marked that had the different photo stickers on them, so we knew which area was from where.
Did you do any more videotaping, or was that done the first day?
No, that was just the first.
Sergeant Bjorensen, was he there that second day?
I don't recall.
He's a supervisor, correct?
Correct.
And what would the purpose of him being there mean to you?
He would have been directing us, looking around the house for anything he may have thought was relevant and having us do that, anything we may have missed, just another set of eyes.
When you did the cars, did you check the cars for blood?
Yes.
And did any blood show up in the vehicles?
No.
When you went the second day, you were the lead crime scene tech, correct?
Yes.
Was it the first day or the second day that you seized evidence?
It would have been the second day. The first day I did not collect anything.
Okay. Tell me what evidence you seized on the second day.
On the second day, I seized all of those swabs that would have tested positive for blood.
Had you left them there overnight?
No.
So you took some out the first day, is that right?
No, the first day I didn't do any swabs. It
No
was just the
swabs at all?
video.
Okay, I'm
Right.
sorry.
You're fine. And then the second day, I would have collected the swabs, and I also collected additional evidence, such as all of those electronics that were found.
Can you tell us what electronics you seized?
There was a black iPod in the Highlander vehicle. The white iPhone 6 that we had located under that center couch cushion. Red T-Mobile cell phone that was in John's bedroom. MP3 player from Richard's room. Verizon MiFi jetpack from Richard's room. Kindle from Richard's room. A Halo charger. A D-Link cord from the den. A D-Link camera box from the den. A thumb drive from the den. Looks like about 2 iPads from the den, 1 iPad from the living room, 2 cell phones from the den, about 3 laptops from the den. That may be all of them.
Did you also seize a thumb drive?
Yes.
And did you collect all of the electronics?
Yes, everything that I had listed there I collected.
Okay. Now, when you collect the electronics, do you process it, or is it another situation where you just notify investigation as what you've collected, and then they decide if it's going to be processed or not?
Yeah, investigations will decide.
Was anyone else there that usually was not at a crime scene?
DHS, Department of Homeland Security, came on one of the days. I'm not sure which one, but typically they're not on a normal crime scene.
Okay, and when DHS came, how many people came with them?
I believe there were just 2.
Okay, and what was their purpose there?
They were also trying to figure out if it may have been related, since Richard was employed with them, so they had to do their own follow-up investigation.
Did it appear that it was a criminal investigation?
Yes.
And when they were there, did they seize any of the electronics?
I think they may have, but I can't say for certain, and if so, which ones, I'm not sure.
Did you get a receipt for the electronics that the Homeland Security investigators seized?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Do you know if a receipt was given to anyone for those electronics?
I'm not sure.
Would their seizure of the electronics have been between them and the lead investigator, or who would they check? I mean, it's unusual for somebody to take evidence from a crime scene, is it not?
Right.
So who would they have checked with, or who would have given them permission to do that?
So if anything, they would have asked on scene with the investigator, and if not, what they could have done, if they needed something after that we turned our items into evidence, they could go to evidence and check it out themselves. That way there would be a chain of custody there.
On the items you seized, including the thumb drive, Did you deliver those back to evidence, or did Homeland Security take it from the house?
I turned them into evidence.
And you don't know what happened after that?
No, correct.
Did you notify the two investigators as to what electronics you had found?
If they were at the house and we came across something, they would have been aware, but besides that, no.
Didn't have much conversation with them?
No.
Did you go back a third day?
Yes.
And what did you do on that third day?
That third day is the day that Christy Rollins and I went back to spray the house with Blue Star.
Okay. And that was just the two of you?
Yes.
And again, was there any place for you to sign in on an evidence log or anything like that as to who goes in and out of the house?
On that day, no, I don't believe so.
Every day when you left the house, how was it sealed?
We kept the crime scene tape up around the house, but we would always use the same door to go in and out, that back door, and we would put a piece of red crime scene tape over it and sign the edges so we would know if it was broken when we got back the next day.
Did you take photographs of the back door?
Yes.
Did it appear to be broken in any way?
No.
Were you aware that there was, for lack of a better word, I'll say a forced entry by, to get into the residence?
I don't recall what the deputies initially did when they got there.
But it didn't look as if the door had been broken or forced in?
Not that I saw.
Okay. Did you help Ms. Rollins transport any of the evidence on the first day?
I don't believe so, no. Possibly the clothes, because we collected all of the clothing that was on top of all three of the decedents. So if she would have ran out of room in her van, I would have helped, but nothing that sticks out.
What kind of vans do y'all drive?
Ford Transits.
Are those the small vans or are those the real big ones?
They're the small ice cream truck looking ones.
Okay. You each had one, I guess?
Yes.
Did you help her carry the trash can out?
Not that I remember, no.
But you may have helped her carry, what did you do, put the clothes in those big black-looking bags and carry them out?
Yeah, the big grocery bags, yeah.
I don't have anything further of this witness, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you can step down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to announce it this time? You,
Judge, the state has stipulated with me that we are going to introduce defendant's exhibit number 21, which is a thermostat in the foyer of the house. This is a photograph taken by Ms. Rollins on the first day she was there, which would have been the 31st of July.
Okay, the state stipulation is that that is in the hallway, not in the foyer.
I'm sorry, the hallway.
State agrees.
all right, it's admitted and you may
Yeah,
publish. All right, state, call your next witness, please.
State calls Rusty Bjorensen.
Good morning. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Good morning.
Morning.
Will you state your full name, please?
Rusty Bjorensen.
Bjorensen, I always say it wrong. And will you spell the last name for us?
B as in boy, Jorensen.
Okay. And Mr. Bjorensen, where are you employed?
Escambia County Sheriff's Office,
How long have you been with the sheriff's office?
32 years.
And let me take you back to July. Excuse me. Let me take you back to July of 2015. Did you respond to 4605 Deerfield Drive?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what was the purpose of you responding? What was your role?
At that time, my position with the sheriff's office was the supervisor of a crime scene. And on cases of, larger cases or major cases, then I would typically respond with the crime scene techs or the investigators. So that was the role for that particular day.
Okay. And while you were at the home on, is it July 31st that you went?
Yes, the initial day, yes.
Okay. While you were there, did you touch the kitchen sink handle in the kitchen?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And why? What was your purpose?
Well, while we were there, you know, obviously walking through the scene, there was, you're looking at different things, the handle, whatever it may be on the sink, is there anything there? It looked like there may be some residue or something there, so I had put gloves on. Talking with the other techs there, decided we were going to remove the handle so we could view it better, maybe see what was there, if anything. And so I assisted by taking the screw out of the top of the sink so it could be removed. They were just having difficulty getting it done.
Okay. And were you later requested by FDLE to provide a DNA sample?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And did you later learn that your DNA may have come up on that sink handle screw?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. Now, in your 30-plus years, has that ever happened before?
No, ma'am, it has not.
Do you remember what the temperature was like that day on July 31st, 2015?
Don't remember the exact temperature, but I remember being really warm that day.
And in your experience, do crime scene personnel or even investigators, or you yourself, do you turn air conditioner on or down when you process crime scenes sometimes?
Yes, depending on the scene, and it's not something that may be done immediate. You know, it would be after a walkthrough or whatever it may be. And you know you're going to be there a while, it's what's the conditions like or whatever it may be, then you may turn it down or turn it on.
Okay.
Because create the working environment.
Right. Do you remember when you first went in the home on July 31st, if the house was hot, warm, cold? Do you remember?
I remember it being warm, yes.
And is it possible that you or the crime scene technicians would have turned the air conditioner down?
Very likely, yes.
And before it gets turned down, are the temperatures documented?
Typically they are, yes.
Now, did you take any photos or collect any evidence other than this sink handle screw?
I did not.
Okay. And is that typically the part of the actual crime scene technicians?
Yes, it is.
Okay. In your training and experience, how would you describe the processing of that home on Deerfield Drive?
Extensive, overwhelming.
And why do you say that?
Just for the amount of things that were in the home. Obviously the scene itself with the victims. Just a large amount of stuff in the house.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Those are all my questions.
Mhm.
I've been told I talk loud, so I'll get back a little bit. Sergeant Bjorensen, how many different days did you go to the scene?
I don't remember specifically, but I would say 4 or 5 days probably, off and on.
Were you there the first day?
Yes, sir, I was.
And what time did you arrive on the first day? And that would be July 31st.
I don't recall the specific time.
Christy Rollins was one of your crime scene techs, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And was she there when you arrived, or did she get there after you arrived?
I believe she was there just prior to my arrival.
And Ms. Rollins was fairly experienced, correct?
Yes, I would say so.
Did you give her directions on how to handle the crime scene, or did you just rely on her to do it because of how many years she had worked there?
It's really a combination, she would get there, or whoever it may be would typically begin with some possibly like photography of the scene or whatever, then they may. So I'm also there in that role as a supervisor to walk, through the scene as that's being done. And there may be things that we both discuss to take a picture of or make sure we make note of, whatever it may be. So it's a combination, but her experience to be able to handle that, I have all the trust on her on that.
And how about Lindsay Eliopulo?
I would say the same.
Okay. Now, so in doing the crime scene, their job is to photograph it, and there's really nothing too small to photograph. Is that fair to say? Because you never know what may develop into being evidence down the line.
I would agree, but that could take place at the scene, or it could take place in a controlled environment later on. Well, once it's collected, so the photography's done at various stages.
But I mean, you want to photograph everything.
In theory, yes, sir.
And that's why you both have the still photography and the video photography.
That's correct.
Now, when you arrived on that first day, was there any kind of evidence log that you sign in on?
An evidence log?
Yes, sir. Or a people log, I guess, for lack of a better word, to keep track of what time someone enters, what time they leave.
On an initial arrival of a scene like that, typically there's a deputy, say a patrol officer, or someone who's been assigned to the immediate area once the scene is secured, okay? And then that person would log in the people entering that at that time.
And they keep track of who leaves too, don't they?
On occasion, I would say yes, depending on what it is, but, how many people coming in and out, where the entry, where the exit may be. He may not see somebody leave, or they may, not say they're leaving or whatever, if they're able to walk across, say, a different part of the yard or something like that.
Well, it's important to keep a record because you want to keep as pristine a crime scene as you can. Am I correct?
I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Okay. Well, what I'm getting at is, in doing an investigation, you're looking for DNA, you're looking for fingerprints, you're looking for any other type of trace evidence, and you want to keep the scene as undisturbed as possible so that all of the crime scene techs and the investigators can do their work. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say, and there's precautionary things that you do, whether it be, shoe coverings or things of that nature, gloves, whoever it may be that may have an interest of why they're at the scene, what role do they play at the scene.
Sure. And that's why you keep a log and other things, just so you know who's in and out and what they're doing there.
Yes,
You
sir.
don't want people just wandering around just because they may be a police officer that wants to see what's going on.
No, sir, that portion of it's controlled.
Okay. Which is why you try to keep a log.
That's correct.
Now, you said that you may or may not have turned the thermostat down. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's important to know especially when you have people who are deceased in a residence, it's important to know what the temperature was in that residence because of the body decomposition.
That's correct.
And so you wouldn't want to necessarily turn a thermostat down without verifying with someone that you're doing it and what the temperature was at the time you entered the residence.
I believe that we did know the temperature at the time that we arrived. I just don't remember what that temperature was.
That would be something important for your crime scene techs to take a picture of, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Now, you indicated that this was an extensive and overwhelming crime scene. When
I believe that was the words I used, yes, sir.
What did you mean by that?
The totality of it, the amount again, the amount of items that were inside the residence,
Are you talking about the stuff that was there?
everything, the number of victims, the amount of stuff that was there, the overall view of the crime scene, how it was left, what was done. There was a lot going on.
Okay. And there were numerous investigators, crime scene techs, patrol officers there, right?
Yes, at various times, yes, sir, that's correct.
And when you realized there were 3 deceased victims, that made it a very important crime scene, obviously.
Yes, sir.
And you said you had your 2 best crime scene techs on it.
I don't know that I used the 2 best crime scene as an
Some of the
adjective for that, but.
more
They were,
experienced?
all the crime scene techs that were involved were experienced.
And you wanted experienced crime scene techs there, correct?
Absolutely.
And part of their job is to find evidence.
That's correct.
After they had finished their work at the crime scene and the investigators were at the crime scene, they're also looking for evidence, is that correct?
Can you restate that,
I
please?
said, the crime scene techs are looking for evidence
Yes, sir.
and the investigators are looking for evidence.
I would agree with that.
It's a collaborative effort.
I would agree, yes, sir.
And everybody wants to get as much evidence together as they can. Is that right?
Are you meaning the collection
to
of the
collect it,
evidence or
yes.
just observations of what may be there?
Both, really.
Okay.
Is that true?
That's true, yes.
Okay, in this particular case, as I understand it, after the crime scene was closed, is that a good word to use, or when you were finished with it, or
At the end of the number of days or on a daily basis?
at the end of the number of days? You
Okay.
finished the crime scene, am I right?
Yes, sir.
After that, weren't 2 knives found that were of some evidentiary value?
I recall one, I'm not sure about the second one.
Well, there was one in a chair,
Yes, sir.
and there was also one left in a sofa.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think when I talked to you earlier, you said that that was an oversight. Is that fair to say? Because you said you wouldn't call it an error.
I could see me saying that word, yes, sir,
I can show it to you when you said you wanted.
for the deposition. Yes, sir.
you-
I recall.
Okay. So that was an oversight.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what other evidence may have been missed?
No, sir, I would not know that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any redirect?
Mr. Bjorensen, I'm going to show you what had been previously entered into evidence. As states 18 and 19, are those photographs taken of the backdoor entrance by Christine Rollins?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Okay, and does that thermostat, I know it's kind of hard to see, but does that have a thermostat right there?
Yes, appears to be one to the left side of the door.
Okay, and what does it say? I know it's hard, and you can look at 19 as well, it might be a little easier. 18 and 19. The top two photographs.
I see it now, sorry. Yes, indicating 87 degrees.
Okay. Now, what I also want to show you is the offense report of Andrew Smith from July 31st of 2015. Second page. Is your name on that log list?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Is Lindsay Eliopulo on that log list?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Christine Rollins?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And a number of other individuals who entered the scene.
That's correct.
When the crime scene technicians process the scene, do they wear gloves?
Absolutely.
Do they wear booties on their feet?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And given the condition of this home, is it earth-shattering that 2 knives were found lodged in a sofa and a chair?
No, ma'am, it's not.
Thank you, those are all my questions.
All right, thank you, sir. You can step down.
Thank you.
State call your next witness.
Judge, we need 2 minutes with this witness, maybe a bathroom break.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Oh, I was told one juror needed some confirmation for work. Okay, ma'am, could you approach for a second, please?